views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Last June, we brought in one of tonight's guests onto the program to show off his remarkable photos in what he calls the White Shirt Project. These are dramatic photos of Bronx people who are wearing, yes, white shirts. While they make for compelling photos, there's an important underlying theme in the work about mental health. Well, he's back tonight to introduce the next step in his project. And in addition to further exploring the project and related mental health issues, we'll have a photo he recently took of someone you will recognize. And he's brought with him an activist and a filmmaker who has an important perspective on some of these underlying mental health issues. So please join me in welcoming back to Bronx Talk photographer extraordinaire, Jose Ramon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back.
Nice to have you. He's not wearing a white shirt. He could have been. I am, actually. Nonetheless, also a creative spirit who finds ways to tell compelling stories through art and film and other projects. In fact, he founded an organization called Depressed Black Gay Men. He calls it DPGM. Antoine Craigwell, nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's a pleasure.
Let's start with you, Jose. So we did this white shirt project. My colleague Rena Valentine was on the program. I thought that was the finished project, finished product, but you really have vision to do a lot of other different things.
I absolutely do. It's like mental health. It's not something that goes away. It's going to stay around for a while. And I figure for as long as there's issues with mental health, I probably have a little mission ahead of me. And that's to continue this project and to get as many people involved as possible.
As you know, I love the photography. I love the photos, and we're going to show some of those original photos. And I thought they were just, spectacular and a way of telling who Bronx people are, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we met for the first time, and you said, well, wait a minute, this is about mental health. This is a real serious thing. And then even talked about your own issues.
Right.
I was like, wait a minute, I had no idea. Talk to me about, and we've reviewed this before, but I think it's worth retelling. Why the white shirts, and why did that concept fit into your personal issues and issues with wanting to advocate for people who have mental health to get support?
Well, the angle that I was taking was one that when you're depressed and you're going through things, when you have mental health issues, we think of things in that darkness, that cave-like environment where you don't want to associate with anything that's full of light and happiness because you're not in that mind frame. So I wanted to associate white with clarity, white with purity, and how sometimes when you open up that shade, you get a different perspective, you get a different feel, everything changes. So I associated white with that perspective and attached it to the mental health aspect.
This I almost said was, but this really is a very personal issue for you. Talk about how doing the photography has affected you personally. I mean, has it helped? Has it achieved one of the goals was to give you, which you expressed to me, give you the outlet and kind of help you, kind of self-actualize? Has it done that, or is it still a struggle? I mean, give us some perspective on it.
Well, it has. It has primarily what it has done is it brought me back into contact with people, which I had lost touch with. There was going through this whole process of PTSD and how one thing triggered another. I didn't want to have any kind of associations with anybody. It was very hard. picking up that camera for the first time and creating that connection helped in the healing process. And it's still a process that I use as a form of therapy
For yourself.
for myself.
How, you know, you talked very expansively about the creation of it, the philosophy behind it, the notion of, and hang in there, you're going to see the pictures. Don't go away. How long did it take you to come up with that? Or did you kind of wake up one morning and say, aha, white shirts, that's how I'll do it? Or was it really kind of like, how do I deal with this?
Well, it's funny because the way my mind works is that
Uh-oh, he's telling us how his mind works. Here we go.
is that if
We
I
need
see
about 3 hours
something,
show here
well,
today.
yeah, it could be. But when I see something that triggers something else, like right away, I'm a problem solver. So there's always something that can use a little tweaking as far as I'm concerned in one way or the other. So and that comes from being a service guy, service tech for 25 years. So you don't think about it, you just do it. I saw that this just popped up really quick. Mental health, white shirt, purity, clarity.
It just came up, and you know,
Yeah.
sometimes if you, who is it? I'm going to go into my Lehman College English education. William Wordsworth said that genius is a stream, and if you can pop into that stream,
Yeah.
and in a way, that's what you're saying, and you get the idea, and you're off and running.
You run with it.
Antoine, let's just talk about the notion of art and telling difficult stories through creativity. I mean, you know Jose, you know what his work has been. Put that together for us. Why is this a valid way of dealing with very serious issues? And certainly we're going to show a video, by the way, that Antoine has put together that's going to really rock your world. But talk to me just about the notion of art and where it plays in telling significant stories.
Gary, I think what Jose is doing is different. It's particularly different because the way he's going about highlighting mental health and bringing other people from the community, and by focusing, by the photography that he's using, he's putting faces to mental health. He's saying to people, this is something that exists. This is something that exists among us. And it was actually one of his subjects in one of his portraits who reached out to me, Javon Martin from the Princess Jenée Place. And he suggested Jose to be involved to me, to be part of our conference. And I was like, okay, what does Jose do? Who is Jose? So I started looking up, we got connected, and I said, Jose, here's what I want you to do. I want you to bring as many of your pieces and set them up as an exhibition in our conference. And I want you to leave these up throughout the conference, and we will take the opportunity to make mention of you, of your work, so that people can see that here is the face of mental health.
And I have to interject, that face is you and me and everybody else. 'Cause we all have those kinds of issues, some more serious than others.
Precisely, because we're in a conference environment and it can become a little too abstract or removed. So here are visual images of what mental health looks like. It may not necessarily manifest in somebody curled up on a bed or curled up or sitting on a sidewalk.
Or in a hospital.
Right. But with the elegance and the formality that comes with wearing a white shirt, that you then set apart. And I think what's also important is that he didn't use color. The starkness between black and white sets all the images apart and it just creates a different dynamic.
We're about to show them. I do want to ask you or make one more point. As somebody in the media, one other very direct effect, we're living it right now. It got him on TV. It got us to talk about it. No, I mean, I think that's very significant because if he would have sent me an email, I want to do a show on mental health, maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have, maybe I would. But this is a way of getting it out there.
Precisely.
And putting it in a way that if you read it in a book or you read it in a newspaper article or you read it in a medical journal, people won't understand it.
The ordinary man is not going to grab onto it. And so one of the things that I've spoken with Jose about is that for our upcoming conference in October and going forward, we will continue to have Jose's portraiture as part of an exhibition in the conference going forward.
We're going to show the first 5 photographs from the previous edition, and then one photograph you have ready to go, which is a really special one, that we're going to show. And then you're going to talk about what the next step is. And then I want to talk about DBGM and this incredible film that Antoine worked on. So let's go. We're going to look at this. This was done maybe 6 months ago, a year ago?
More or less.
Look at this. And folks, let's give people on the air a chance to see it. So who is this and what is this?
This is Adriel. Adriel works in the school systems. He's a psychologist also. And what's taking place here is that he's never been able to really express himself outside of a corporate world or a corporate environment where he's had to.
That's his safe zone.
Exactly. So now pulling out from that, he's always felt like that's always choked him. So he's expressing what it feels like to wear a white shirt in contrast to it being light. So now here it is.
Did you tell him to put your hand on?
I don't tell anyone to do anything.
And so this is naturally came out.
This is what came out.
See, this is why I love what Jose is doing, and I love art in general because it tells stories, and if you handle it right, it'll happen.
Exactly.
All right, next, numero dos. Oh,
This is Albert Rodriguez. Albert works in the banking industry. He's been there for 25 years.
you know, I want to interject something before you even talk about who he is. So the way this looks to me, this looks like a tough guy. This looks like a guy who's, you know, you don't want to cross on a dark night. And now you start by telling he works in the banking industry. And I don't want to prejudge anybody, but he's probably a very lovely young man.
He is the most loving person, the most giving person you would ever want to meet. And he happens to be my partner.
Oh, there you go. No wonder you said that. So talk to me about this photograph and why was this important. And I have to say, in some of Jose's writing, he's talked about Albert as being one of his solutions, a way that you have really helped to develop yourself. So go ahead.
So
Sing away. I like this.
Albert,
Get personal.
I met Albert during a period of my life that was very rough for me. I had just gone into therapy. I was coming out of a troubled relationship into another one. I had many losses. And Albert was that white shirt. He was that light for me at the time. And he still continues to be. So he's been a great support to me from the very beginning.
So then what about this photograph that my visceral reaction was that this is a tough guy? Just talk to me about the image we're seeing.
Okay, so Albert is not this. He's the complete opposite. He is not that tough guy that you will see, even though at first it's impression, this is what you get.
So can I interject then? Then I will
Yes.
say that there is a passion that burns within him that he doesn't get a chance to let out. And this photograph is realistic to that, is honorable to that concept.
It could be interpreted as that, yes.
All right, well, that's how I did. All right, next.
This is Priscilla Hernandez. Priscilla Hernandez is, she's a writer. She's in the circuit of writers and poets in the Bronx she's been around for a very long time.
The photograph says to me, pride.
Pride and hurt also. There's
Yes.
stories behind every image.
Well, you should see Antoine.
Some are told.
He picked it right up. I could see it. He was like, oh.
Some are told, some are untold. I leave it up to them to tell their full story or not. But she has a great story.
You know, and in terms of women, in terms of Bronx women, this speaks to me and says Bronx women. I have to tell you, their strength, their toughness,
Yes.
their beauty, you know, their internal beauty, their pride.
She's a strong woman. She really is.
It comes right through. Good job on the photo. All right, next.
This is Orlando Ferran. He's a poet, a writer, multimedia artist. He is from Cuba. He came here some time ago. He's very interesting in that he can be many things. You know, he can be that soft person. He can be that intellectual, which he is.
Mm-hmm.
He can be also the funny, you know, guy that, you know, is silly. So he encapsulates all that.
There's a I don't know, softness. There's a niceness that comes out of this that, like, to me, looks approachable.
Approachable yet proud.
Yeah,
so
no
he's,
question with the fact that
yeah.
his.
So he takes pride in everything that he
And,
does.
and we should interject. So you have white shirts that they select when they come in, and they have to be wearing black pants, right? And the only thing they're wearing from the waist up is the white shirt.
There are 5 or 6 white shirts that everyone has used. So these shirts contain
hope you
the
clean 'em.
energy. Well, I try to. After about the 5th or 6th wear,
There you go.
but they contain the
And
energy
then they
of
can
everybody.
decide to wear them open or closed or
Open or closed. The
whatever.
only thing that I do ask them to do is to raise the collar.
Raise the collar.
It makes it less formal. It's
It's a little hipper. All right.
Yeah.
So wait, now I'm counting because it's photograph number 6, right? That's the one, right? Do I, folks in the booth, do I have that right? Okay, so this is number 4. There's one more, and then we're going to do what I think is a special one.
Okay.
More special than the others. Go ahead. Oh,
This is Fabio Cozza, and Fabio has a big story to tell.
I was just going to say it looks like he's got something to say.
Yeah.
He's like considering a lot.
There's in his story, or at least in what he shared, there's a lot of pain. He's a survivor of many things, one of them being child abuse, sexual abuse,
Oh.
which he hashtags. And how he chose to describe his blurb, or how he blurbed out his story, was in hashtags. So hashtag child abuse, hashtag pain, hashtag.
There is a consternation on his face. There is a confusion. There is a sense of depth that needs, if you were to approach him, I've always looked at it in that term, that it would need unraveling, so to speak.
And not to mention also, a lot of the participants also cried during the process.
So then you did these, and I want you to introduce the next segment. Don't put it up yet. And so then you decided you wanted to have 2 people.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Usually when you have, when you're in a situation where you need help, there's always somebody who's unseen.
So as Jose and Albert, for example.
Basically, and this is why I wanted to highlight Albert. So this other person is there for your support mostly, and nobody knows or hears about this person because you did either for one reason or another, they never surface. Nobody gets to see them. So I wanted to highlight that other person, that other support system that is not known. Which is usually that person that you go to cry on their shoulder, the person that you care and share with that you wouldn't normally share with anybody else. The person who encourages you, loves you unconditionally, could be a brother or sister, a family member, a
Husband,
friend,
wife,
husband,
certainly.
wife.
Boyfriend, girlfriend, who knows?
All
Friend,
of that.
I mean,
all of
yeah,
that. But there's
and-
always that one person that says, don't worry about
So
it.
you shot, and you've done them. You've done the shoots.
Right. So
For
I
4
want
or 5 or 6 couples.
Yeah, it's going to be more limited this time, only because I want that other person to be highlighted. I want that person to come through. I want them to show the world who they are, even though they've never had the opportunity to.
We don't have a band, but if we did, I'd have them do a drum roll. Are we ready? All right, let them rip. Put this picture up. Here we go. For the first showing ever, there it is. That's me and my beautiful wife, Suzanne. And so I got to go through one of these shoots with Jose. I don't want to, I know a lot about the people who are in this photo. I don't know, maybe Antoine, what do you think? It's pretty good, right? As a
Yes.
photograph, certainly as a portrait of the 2 of us, it's pretty good. Mutually supportive. I mean, I'm obviously the one on TV. She supports me, obviously.
Right.
But then in our interview prior, it came out that she had some things that she wanted to talk about, and I've tried to do my best.
It's a beautiful shot. So here's the thing, right? Usually what I intended to do was have the primary and the supporter tell their story. But what happened in the process is that the stories changed, the roles
The
changed,
dynamic
the
changes,
dynamics have changed. So now not only is the supporter now the primary, where she or he offers the support. It goes back and forth because you're not always just supporting somebody. Sometimes you do need the support in return. So those roles shift. And in that, I wanted each person to tell their story. And you can see that and feel that sometimes throughout the dialogue. And in this case, this is what took place.
Listen, I've been on TV for a very long time. I never thought I'd look like that.
You look good. You look good.
But it's a beautiful, beautiful shot.
And you guys were great.
Well, whatever. We somehow survived. There are some anecdotes I could tell, but I'll tell that off camera.
Took a couple of hours.
Yeah,
too,
that's right. Antoine, let's turn to you then and your very important work. How did the idea of, I want to get the letters right, DBGM come about? Depressed gay black men.
Well, first off, we try
gay
not to use the whole full word spelling, like GMHC or others organizations who have transformed themselves. They still keep the name, but they now use the acronym. So we just use DBGM. But DBGM, as another friend reminded me, started by accident. And just like with your everything, I guess, like you were talking about Wadsworth and tapping into that stream,
right,
happens by accident. I did a documentary, You're Not Alone, and some of the issues that were raised in the film, like sexual acceptance of oneself and sexual identity by one's parents or family.
Or friends or teachers. I mean, I'll go further.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
just
we know
just
what
simply
it is.
acceptance.
Right.
Contracting HIV, sexual abuse, the role of the church, bullying, and then growing old as a black gay man. So all these issues came up in the film, and we recognized that this is much bigger than just the film, that this is something that reaches across the entire city, across the entire country, and as we discovered later on, reaches the entire world, especially for people of color.
You know, I've done some video work with about black women in sport, and one of the things that came out was the double prejudice that they were African American and they also were women and subject to a prejudice. In this case, they're African American and they're also homosexual, and there is that double prejudice as well.
Right.
And just to add into, even feed into Jose's concept, they're dealing with this, and these are very difficult things, and it's very easy to say, well, go, feel better, or, nobody's
Precisely.
bothering you. But these are deep issues. You're not letting me be me, really?
But you're also missing one other aspect to this, is that there's mental health in the people of color communities. And you say African American, but I say black people, so I'm including Afro-Caribbean, Afro-European, Africans, African Americans.
I want to just show this video before we run out of time. This is a trailer for You Are Not Alone.
For the film.
I just found it incredibly powerful. I must show it, and I want to make sure we fit it in before the show. So let's just go right to it. This is the trailer for You Are Not Alone, and you'll see why I'm so compelled by it.
Still in the closet about my homosexuality. I was still trying to come to grips with being gay.
Being raised in the church, that was a big, big no-no.
The good books say a marriage is between a man and a woman.
What's wrong with you? Do you need to see somebody? Do you need help?
That was the one thing that severed any relationship that we ever could have.
I was promiscuous, and I stopped counting after 100. Hey, I'm my experience, if that's what you want to call it.
I was actually a college student at 19 dealing with HIV.
If I'm gonna die anyway, why am I fighting?
I just wasn't happy anymore with life or myself.
I think I was kind of forced into believing that this was just a part of life.
I guess I knew when I woke up in the hospital on a gurney, being wheeled into the emergency room after taking a handful of muscle relaxers. That was a clear sign that something was up. The problem is in your head at the moment, so you gotta talk to other people. You've gotta share what's going on inside.
You just kind of got to get over your homophobia.
You need to pray and ask for forgiveness.
It's not as simple as that.
Because often their voices have not been heard. Your voice is part of your body, It needs to be connected to who you are.
It's who we be. I don't do black, I be black. I don't do male, I be male. I don't do gay, I be gay.
This is you, and this is how God made you, and this is, I believe, how God has made me.
Talk about that pain being in an anti-gay and black world.
We are not meant to be inauthentic for very long.
So I don't have to be perfect being me. I just have to be me.
Well, what are you going to do on the last day of judgment? I said, I'm going to say to Allah, Allah, get you a big popcorn, a giant soda, and let the video roll.
There it is, as powerful as you could imagine. We only have a little bit of time, but you were talking to me before the show about suicide rates in this community in particular. Very
Right.
disturbing.
Well, it is actually very disturbing, and there are a couple of things about it. The New York City Department of Health just issued a suicide report for New York City between 2009 and 2016. And what they're showing is that across the board, they're saying that more white men take their lives than others. Yes, the CDC has already declared many years ago that 4 times more men take their lives than women, but 4 times more women attempt suicide. But what was interesting about the New York City report is that the Bronx has the highest rates of suicide.
The pressures, I mean, we've only tapped the surface, but through your creativity and your passion and your artwork and your photography, we got to tell a little bit of a story tonight. And I hope we've got some people thinking about the reality of who they are and the people around them. I think that's all we can ask. Jose Ramon, thanks for the picture.
Thank you for the
We had a great
opportunity.
time, and you're just a wonderful photographer and now a
Thank you
good
so
friend.
much.
Thank you so much. And Antoine Craigwell, thank you so much for fighting for people who deserve it.
Thank you very much again for having me.
Folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard or saw on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, and if you don't like my photograph, don't tell me. You can send us an email at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org. You can send us a tweet at BronxTalk or post them on our Facebook page. We thank our producer, who's Helen Greenberg. Our directors are William Guzman and Nick Marrero. We'll see you next week. We'll do something. I don't know what. Good night.
Thank you.